Question 1. The review process indicates a citizen has filed a formal complaint against an Arlington, TX, police department officer alleging unprofessional conduct. The officer in question is a long-serving member of the department with a strong performance record. The complainant is seeking immediate assurance that action will be taken and has requested regular updates on the investigation's progress. Considering the Arlington Police Department's civil service rules and regulations, which of the following approaches best navigates this situation while upholding departmental integrity and procedural fairness? Option A. Dismiss the complaint without a formal investigation, citing the officer's long tenure and positive record as sufficient grounds to question the validity of the complaint. Option B. Provide the complainant with detailed information about the investigation's progress and preliminary findings as they become available, to assure them that their concerns are being addressed promptly. Option C. Advise the complainant that their complaint will be investigated, but subtly discourage them from pursuing it further due to the officer's standing within the department. Option D. Initiate a thorough and impartial investigation, strictly in accordance with the Arlington Police Department's civil service rules and regulations, ensuring all facts are gathered and documented, and communicate updates to the complainant only as permitted by departmental policy and the progress of the investigation. Correct answer is D. Initiate a thorough and impartial investigation, strictly in accordance with the Arlington Police Department's civil service rules and regulations, ensuring all facts are gathered and documented, and communicate updates to the complainant only as permitted by departmental policy and the progress of the investigation. Explanation. The review process indicates a potential violation of civil service rules within the Arlington, TX, Police Department concerning the handling of a citizen complaint. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the department's commitment to transparency and accountability with the need to protect the integrity of internal investigations and the privacy of individuals involved. Missteps can lead to public distrust, legal challenges, and damage to officer morale. Careful judgment is required to ensure due process for all parties while upholding departmental standards. The best professional approach involves a thorough and impartial investigation conducted strictly in accordance with the Arlington Police Department's civil service rules and regulations. This means gathering all relevant facts, interviewing all parties involved, and documenting the process meticulously. The investigation should be objective, seeking to determine whether the alleged misconduct occurred and, if so, to what extent. Any disciplinary action or corrective measures must be based solely on the findings of this investigation and applied consistently with established departmental policy and civil service guidelines. This approach ensures fairness, adherence to established procedures, and maintains the credibility of the internal review process. An approach that involves prematurely sharing details of the ongoing investigation with the complainant without departmental authorization is professionally unacceptable. This violates the principles of due process and confidentiality, potentially prejudicing the investigation and compromising the rights of the officer under review. It also undermines the established procedures for handling complaints and can lead to the dissemination of incomplete or inaccurate information, damaging the department's reputation. Another professionally unacceptable approach is to dismiss the complaint outright without a proper investigation, based on the complainant's perceived lack of credibility or the seniority of the officer involved. This demonstrates a failure to uphold the department's commitment to investigating all allegations of misconduct, regardless of the complainant's status or the officer's rank. It erodes public trust and suggests a lack of accountability within the department. Finally, an approach that involves retaliating against the complainant for filing the complaint is a severe ethical and regulatory violation. This is not only unprofessional but also illegal, as it discourages legitimate reporting of misconduct and creates a hostile environment. Such actions would be a direct contravention of civil service protections and departmental policies designed to prevent retaliation. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established policies and regulations, fairness, impartiality, and thorough documentation. When faced with a citizen complaint, the first step is to consult the relevant civil service rules and departmental procedures. The process should then involve objective fact-finding, ensuring all parties have an opportunity to be heard, and making decisions based solely on the evidence gathered and in accordance with established guidelines. Transparency should be maintained within the bounds of procedural fairness and confidentiality. Question 2. Performance analysis shows a need for enhanced information gathering protocols within the Arlington Police Department to support ongoing investigations. An officer believes a specific individual, who is not currently a suspect but is believed to have relevant information, may be employed by a local business. What is the most appropriate and legally sound method for the officer to attempt to obtain information from this individual or their employer? Adhering to Texas state law and departmental guidelines. Option A. Initiate a formal request through the Arlington Police Department's Records Division or designated investigative unit to ascertain employment details and explore legally permissible avenues for contact or information disclosure. Option B. Seek information through casual conversations with the individual's colleagues or acquaintances outside of official channels. Option C. Attempt to access the individual's personal electronic devices or social media accounts without a warrant to find employment information or other relevant data. Option D. Contact the individual's employer directly and informally inquire about their employment status and any knowledge they might have regarding the investigation. Correct answer is A. Initiate a formal request through the Arlington Police Department's Records Division or designated investigative unit to ascertain employment details and explore legally permissible avenues for contact or information disclosure. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for information with the legal and ethical obligations to protect individual privacy and due process. The Arlington Police Department, like any law enforcement agency, operates under strict legal frameworks governing the collection, retention, and dissemination of information. Missteps can lead to legal challenges, damage to public trust, and internal disciplinary actions. The pressure to solve cases quickly must be tempered by adherence to established procedures and the rights of individuals involved. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a systematic and legally compliant approach to information gathering. This means initiating a formal request through the appropriate channels within the Arlington Police Department, which would likely involve the Records Division or a designated investigative unit. This process ensures that any information obtained is handled according to Texas law and departmental policy, respecting privacy rights and maintaining the integrity of evidence. Such a formal request would trigger a review to determine if the information is releasable under Texas Government Code Chapter 552, Public Information Act, or other applicable statutes, and if it is, it would be provided through official channels. This approach prioritizes legal compliance and due process. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves directly contacting the individual's employer without a formal legal basis, such as a subpoena or court order. This violates privacy expectations and potentially Texas privacy laws, as it bypasses established procedures for obtaining information. It could also be seen as an unauthorized disclosure of information or an attempt to coerce cooperation, which is ethically problematic and could lead to civil liability for the department. Another incorrect approach is to rely on informal, off-the-record conversations with colleagues or acquaintances of the individual. This method is unreliable, lacks any official documentation, and bypasses the chain of command and established investigative protocols. Information obtained this way is not verifiable and could be inaccurate, leading to flawed investigative decisions. Furthermore, it risks violating departmental policy regarding information handling and could expose officers to accusations of gossip or unprofessional conduct. A third incorrect approach is to access the individual's personal electronic devices or accounts without a warrant or explicit consent. This is a clear violation of privacy rights protected under the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution and Texas law. Such an action would be considered an illegal search and seizure, rendering any information obtained inadmissible in court and exposing the officer and the department to severe legal repercussions, including civil lawsuits and criminal charges. Professional reasoning. Professionals in law enforcement must always operate within the bounds of the law and departmental policy. When seeking information, the decision-making process should begin with identifying the specific legal authority or departmental procedure that permits the requested action. If no clear legal or procedural pathway exists for the desired method of information gathering, alternative, compliant methods must be explored. This involves consulting with supervisors, legal counsel, or the Records Division to ensure all actions are lawful, ethical, and in line with best practices for maintaining public trust and the integrity of investigations. Question 3. The risk matrix shows a potential for increased citizen complaints regarding response times in the Arlington, TX Police Department's North Sector due to a recent reduction in patrol units. Considering the principles of public service and accountability within the Texas regulatory framework for law enforcement agencies, which of the following actions best addresses this situation? Option A. Proactively inform the city manager's office and the Arlington City Council about the patrol reduction, its rationale, and the anticipated impact on response times in the North Sector, allowing for informed discussion and potential mitigation strategies. Option B. Only communicate the patrol reduction internally to departmental staff, assuming external stakeholders will not be significantly affected. Option C. Downplay the potential impact of the patrol reduction to city leadership, framing it as a minor operational adjustment to avoid unnecessary concern. Option D. Implement the patrol reduction immediately and address any citizen complaints regarding response times on a case-by-case basis as they arise. The correct answer is A. Proactively inform the city manager's office and the Arlington City Council about the patrol reduction, its rationale, and the anticipated impact on response times in the North Sector, allowing for informed discussion and potential mitigation strategies. Explanation. The risk matrix shows a potential for increased citizen complaints regarding response times in the Arlington, TX Police Department's North Sector due to a recent reduction in patrol units. This scenario is professionally challenging because it pits resource allocation efficiency against public service expectations and potential impacts on community trust. Balancing departmental operational needs with the public's right to timely police services requires careful judgment and adherence to established protocols. The best approach involves proactively communicating the situation and its potential implications to relevant stakeholders. This includes informing the city manager's office and the Arlington City Council about the revised patrol deployment, the rationale behind it, e.g., budget constraints, strategic reallocation, and the anticipated impact on response times in the North Sector. This approach is correct because it upholds principles of transparency and accountability, which are fundamental to public service. By providing advance notification and context, the department allows city leadership to understand the operational realities and make informed decisions, potentially advocating for additional resources or adjusting public expectations. This aligns with the spirit of good governance and the department's duty to serve the citizens of Arlington effectively and openly. An incorrect approach would be to simply implement the patrol reduction without any prior notification to city leadership or the public. This failure to communicate violates the ethical obligation of transparency and can lead to a breakdown of trust when citizens experience delayed responses and are unaware of the underlying reasons. It also bypasses the established channels for oversight and decision-making within the city government. Another incorrect approach would be to downplay the potential impact on response times to city leadership, presenting the reduction as a minor operational adjustment. This misrepresentation is ethically unsound and undermines the department's credibility. It prevents informed decision-making by city officials and can lead to public dissatisfaction when the reality of slower response times becomes apparent. A further incorrect approach would be to only communicate the changes to internal departmental staff without informing external stakeholders. While internal communication is important, it neglects the department's responsibility to the broader community and its elected representatives, who are ultimately responsible for overseeing public services. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes transparency, accountability, and stakeholder engagement. This involves identifying potential risks and impacts, assessing the implications for public trust and service delivery, and proactively communicating with all relevant parties, including elected officials and the public, to ensure informed decision-making and maintain confidence in the department's operations. Question 4. Investigation of a complaint alleging a violation of departmental policy by an officer within the Arlington TX Police Department has surfaced. The complaint, while not immediately conclusive, contains specific details that warrant further examination. What is the most appropriate initial course of action for the department to take? Option A. Dismiss the complaint without further inquiry, assuming the allegations are unsubstantiated due to a lack of immediate proof. Option B. Publicly announce that an investigation is underway and share preliminary details with local media outlets to assure transparency. Option C. Immediately suspend the officer pending a review of the complaint, without conducting a preliminary investigation to ascertain the facts. Option D. Initiate a formal, impartial investigation led by designated personnel, meticulously gathering all relevant evidence and interviewing all parties involved, in accordance with Arlington Police Department Civil Service rules and regulations. The correct answer is D. Initiate a formal, impartial investigation led by designated personnel, meticulously gathering all relevant evidence and interviewing all parties involved, in accordance with Arlington Police Department Civil Service rules and regulations. Explanation: investigation of a potential internal policy violation within the Arlington TX Police Department presents a professionally challenging scenario due to the inherent need to balance departmental integrity, employee rights, and public trust. Officers are entrusted with significant authority, and allegations of misconduct, even if unsubstantiated, can erode confidence in the department. Therefore, the investigative process must be thorough, impartial, and adhere strictly to established protocols and legal standards to ensure fairness to all parties involved and maintain the credibility of the department. The best approach involves a systematic and objective investigation that prioritizes gathering factual evidence while respecting due process. This means initiating a formal inquiry based on credible information, conducting interviews with all relevant parties, reviewing documentation, and preserving evidence meticulously. The investigation should be led by designated internal affairs personnel or a supervisory officer trained in investigative procedures, ensuring impartiality and adherence to the Arlington Police Department Civil Service rules and regulations, as well as relevant Texas law. This methodical process ensures that decisions are based on facts, not assumptions, and that the rights of the accused officer are protected throughout the inquiry. An approach that involves immediate disciplinary action without a thorough investigation is professionally unacceptable. This bypasses the fundamental principle of due process, potentially leading to unjust consequences for the officer and exposing the department to legal challenges. It demonstrates a failure to uphold the department's commitment to fairness and impartiality, violating the spirit and letter of civil service regulations that mandate a proper investigative process before any punitive measures are taken. Another professionally unacceptable approach is to dismiss the allegations outright without any form of inquiry, especially if the initial information suggests a potential violation. This can be perceived as a cover-up or a lack of commitment to accountability, damaging public trust and potentially allowing misconduct to continue unchecked. It fails to meet the department's obligation to investigate all credible complaints and uphold its standards of conduct. Furthermore, an approach that involves leaking information about the investigation to the public or media before its conclusion is unethical and detrimental. This not only violates the privacy of the officer involved, but can also prejudice the investigation by creating a biased public perception. It undermines the integrity of the investigative process and can have severe repercussions for departmental morale and public confidence. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with assessing the credibility of the initial complaint. If credible, the next step is to consult departmental policy and relevant legal statutes to determine the appropriate investigative procedures. This involves identifying the necessary resources, assigning qualified personnel, and establishing a clear timeline. Throughout the investigation, maintaining objectivity, documenting all actions and findings meticulously, and ensuring confidentiality are paramount. The final decision regarding any disciplinary action must be based solely on the evidence gathered and in strict accordance with established departmental rules and legal requirements. Question 5. Comparative studies suggest that in situations involving potential criminal activity reported by a neighbor in Arlington, Texas, officers must navigate a complex interplay between public safety and individual rights. If officers receive a report of suspicious activity at a residence, but do not have immediate, first-hand knowledge of a crime in progress or evidence being destroyed, what is the most appropriate course of action to ensure compliance with constitutional protections? Option A. Secure the perimeter of the residence, and if exigent circumstances are not immediately apparent, proceed to obtain a search warrant from a magistrate. Option B. Immediately enter the residence to investigate the suspicious activity based on the neighbor's report. Option C. Question the neighbor extensively to gather more details, but do not approach the residence until a warrant is secured, regardless of the nature of the reported activity. Option D. Wait for a period of time to see if further suspicious activity occurs before taking any action. The correct answer is A. Secure the perimeter of the residence, and if exigent circumstances are not immediately apparent, proceed to obtain a search warrant from a magistrate. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for information with the established legal and ethical obligations of law enforcement. Officers must act decisively, but also within the strict confines of the law to avoid jeopardizing investigations or violating individuals' rights. The pressure to obtain information quickly in a potential emergency can lead to hasty decisions that may have significant legal repercussions. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves officers immediately securing the scene, and then, if exigent circumstances are not clearly present and immediate, seeking a warrant from a neutral and detached magistrate. This approach is correct because it upholds the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches and seizures, as interpreted by the Supreme Court in cases like Mapp v. Ohio and Miranda v. Arizona. Obtaining a warrant ensures that probable cause has been reviewed by a judicial officer, providing a legal basis for the search and seizure of evidence. This process respects the privacy rights of individuals while still allowing law enforcement to gather necessary evidence when legally justified. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to immediately enter the residence and search without a warrant or clear exigent circumstances, based solely on a neighbor's suspicion. This violates the Fourth Amendment's warrant requirement. Law enforcement cannot conduct a search based on mere suspicion. Probable cause, supported by specific and articulable facts, is necessary for a warrant, or a well-defined exception to the warrant requirement must apply. Another incorrect approach is to delay any action until a warrant can be obtained, even if there is a strong indication of ongoing criminal activity or immediate danger. Warrants are crucial. The law recognizes exceptions for exigent circumstances, such as the imminent destruction of evidence, the need to prevent escape, or the risk of harm to officers or others. Failing to act when such circumstances exist could lead to preventable harm or loss of critical evidence. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on the neighbor's statement as probable cause for a warrantless entry. While a neighbor's tip can be a component of probable cause, it typically requires corroboration by independent police investigation to establish its reliability and meet the probable cause standard for a search warrant or a warrantless search under exigent circumstances. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes constitutional rights while enabling effective law enforcement. This involves 1. Assessing the situation for immediate threats or the imminent destruction of evidence to determine if exigent circumstances exist. 2. If exigent circumstances are not present, initiating the process to obtain a search warrant based on probable cause. 3. If exigent circumstances are present, carefully documenting the specific facts that justify the warrantless entry and search. And 4. Always acting in accordance with established legal precedent and departmental policy. Question 6. The investigation demonstrates that an Arlington, Texas police officer has recently discovered a close personal friendship with an individual who is now a subject of an ongoing criminal investigation. What is the most appropriate course of action for the officer to take to uphold the integrity of the investigation and departmental standards? Option A. Discreetly attempt to steer the investigation away from incriminating the individual without formally disclosing the relationship. Option B. Immediately report the personal relationship to their direct supervisor and request to be removed from any involvement in the investigation. Option C. Continue with the investigation, believing their personal relationship will not influence their professional judgment. Option D. Discuss the situation with the individual involved to gauge their perspective on the potential impact on the investigation. Correct answer is B. Immediately report the personal relationship to their direct supervisor and request to be removed from any involvement in the investigation. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a situation where a police officer in Arlington, Texas, is faced with a potential conflict of interest due to a personal relationship with an individual involved in a case. This scenario is professionally challenging because it directly implicates the officer's impartiality and the integrity of the investigation. Maintaining public trust requires that all investigations be conducted without bias, and any perception of favoritism can undermine the entire process and lead to legal challenges. The officer must navigate this delicate situation while adhering to the Arlington Police Department's civil service rules and regulations, which are designed to ensure fairness and prevent conflicts of interest. Best professional approach involves immediate and transparent disclosure of the personal relationship to a supervisor. This allows for an objective assessment of the potential conflict and the implementation of appropriate measures, such as reassigning the case to another officer. This approach is correct because it aligns with the fundamental ethical principles of law enforcement, emphasizing transparency, accountability, and the avoidance of even the appearance of impropriety. Specifically, Arlington Police Department civil service rules and regulations, like those in most municipal police departments, mandate reporting of potential conflicts of interest to prevent compromised investigations and uphold departmental standards of conduct. This proactive disclosure ensures that the investigation can proceed impartially, protecting the rights of all parties involved and maintaining the credibility of the Arlington Police Department. Failing to disclose the relationship and continuing with the investigation, even with the belief that impartiality can be maintained, is professionally unacceptable. This approach violates the core principle of avoiding conflicts of interest and creates a significant risk of actual or perceived bias. It directly contravenes departmental rules that require officers to report any circumstances that could compromise their objectivity. Another unacceptable approach is to attempt to subtly influence the investigation to favor the acquaintance without explicit disclosure. This is unethical and illegal, as it constitutes obstruction of justice and a severe breach of professional conduct. It not only compromises the investigation, but also exposes the officer and the department to severe legal repercussions. Finally, assuming the personal relationship has no bearing on the investigation and proceeding without any notification is also professionally unsound. While the officer may genuinely believe they can remain impartial, the mere existence of the relationship creates a reasonable doubt in the minds of the public and potentially the courts regarding the fairness of the investigation. This lack of transparency erodes trust and can lead to the evidence being deemed inadmissible or the case being dismissed. Professionals in law enforcement should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes transparency and adherence to departmental policy when faced with potential conflicts of interest. This framework involves 1. Recognizing the potential conflict. 2. Immediately reporting the conflict to a supervisor. 3. Cooperating with the supervisor's decision regarding reassignment or other measures. 4. Documenting the disclosure and the resolution. This process ensures that the integrity of the investigation and public trust are paramount. Question 7. Assessment of a situation where an Arlington, Texas police officer has probable cause to believe a suspect has evidence of a crime in their residence, but no warrant has been obtained. The officer is concerned the suspect may destroy the evidence if immediate action is not taken. Which course of action best upholds the rights of the suspect and the integrity of the investigation according to established legal and departmental protocols? Option A. Proceed with a warrantless search after receiving informal approval from a supervisor. Option B. Seek consent from a neighbor to search the suspect's property. Option C. Enter the suspect's residence based on the officer's suspicion that evidence might be destroyed. Option D. Obtain a search warrant from a judge based on the established probable cause. Correct answer is D. Obtain a search warrant from a judge based on the established probable cause. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for information with the legal and ethical obligations to protect an individual's privacy and due process rights. The officer must act decisively while adhering strictly to the established procedures of the Arlington TX Police Department civil service rules and Texas law. Missteps can lead to legal challenges, disciplinary action, and erosion of public trust. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves obtaining a warrant based on probable cause. This approach is correct because it aligns with the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which protects against unreasonable searches and seizures, and is codified within Texas law and the Arlington TX Police Department civil service rules regarding evidence collection and individual rights. A warrant ensures that an independent judicial officer has reviewed the evidence and determined that probable cause exists, thereby safeguarding the suspect's rights and ensuring the admissibility of any evidence obtained. Incorrect approach is analysis. Seeking consent from a neighbor to search the suspect's property without a warrant is an ethical and legal failure. This violates the suspect's reasonable expectation of privacy and bypasses the established legal requirement for probable cause and judicial authorization for searches. It could lead to the suppression of any evidence found and disciplinary action against the officer. Entering the suspect's residence based solely on the officer's suspicion that the suspect might destroy evidence without exigent circumstances or a warrant is a violation of constitutional rights and departmental policy. While the desire to preserve evidence is understandable, it does not override the fundamental requirement for legal authorization to enter a private residence. Exigent circumstances, such as immediate danger or imminent destruction of evidence that cannot be prevented by other means, must be present and demonstrable. Contacting a supervisor to discuss the situation, but proceeding with a warrantless search based on the supervisor's informal approval is also professionally unacceptable. Supervisory approval does not negate the legal requirement for a warrant or the presence of legally recognized exigent circumstances. This approach demonstrates a failure to understand and apply the core principles of constitutional law and departmental procedure regarding searches and seizures. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes legal compliance and ethical conduct. This involves 1. Identifying the legal and policy framework governing the situation, in this case, the Fourth Amendment, Texas law, and Arlington PD civil service rules. 2. Assessing the facts to determine if probable cause exists. 3. If probable cause exists, evaluating whether exigent circumstances justify immediate action or if a warrant is required. 4. Consulting with supervisors and legal counsel when in doubt. 5. Always prioritizing the protection of individual rights and due process. Question 8. Stakeholder feedback indicates a need for clarity on immediate actions when officers encounter a suspicious vehicle, an individual in a residential area of Arlington, Texas, late at night, where the individual appears nervous and the vehicle has a strong odor of a controlled substance. What is the most appropriate initial course of action for an Arlington police officer? Option A. Allow the individual to leave with the vehicle to avoid escalating the situation and await further intelligence. Option B. Conduct a brief pat-down of the individual for weapons and then allow them to depart if no weapons are found. Option C. Immediately question the individual about the odor and search the vehicle for contraband without further consultation. Option D. Secure the scene, request a supervisor, and contact the district attorney's office for guidance on further investigative steps, including potential search warrants. The correct answer is D. Secure the scene, request a supervisor, and contact the district attorney's office for guidance on further investigative steps, including potential search warrants. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for information with the established protocols for evidence handling and the rights of individuals involved. Missteps can compromise investigation, lead to legal challenges, and erode public trust in the Arlington Police Department. The pressure to act quickly must be tempered by adherence to the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure and departmental policies. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves securing the scene and immediately notifying the appropriate investigative unit and the district attorney's office. This approach is correct because it ensures that evidence is handled by trained professionals in accordance with legal standards, preserving its integrity for potential prosecution. It also initiates the formal legal process, respecting the rights of the individual and ensuring that any subsequent actions are legally sound and authorized. This aligns with the principles of due process and the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, which mandates proper evidence collection and chain of custody. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to immediately question the individual and collect personal items without proper authorization or documentation. This fails to adhere to the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure regarding search and seizure, potentially rendering any collected evidence inadmissible. It also bypasses the established investigative protocols, which are designed to ensure fairness and accuracy. Another incorrect approach is to release the individual and the vehicle without further investigation or documentation, citing a lack of immediate evidence of a crime. This is professionally unacceptable, as it neglects the duty to investigate suspicious circumstances and could allow a potential criminal to evade justice. It also fails to follow departmental procedures for documenting encounters and potential evidence. A further incorrect approach is to conduct a thorough search of the vehicle and question the individual extensively without first consulting with the district attorney's office or obtaining necessary warrants. This violates the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution and relevant Texas statutes concerning search and seizure, potentially leading to suppression of evidence and civil liability for the department. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to legal statutes and departmental policy. This involves a systematic approach. First, assess the immediate situation and secure the scene. Second, identify the relevant legal frameworks, e.g., Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, U.S. Constitution. Third, consult with appropriate legal counsel, district attorney's office, and specialized investigative units. And fourth, act only with proper authorization and documentation, ensuring the integrity of the investigation and the rights of all parties involved. Question 9. Regulatory review indicates that an Arlington, Texas police officer is under investigation for alleged misconduct. The officer's supervisor, a longtime friend of the officer, is tasked with leading the internal investigation. What approach best upholds the integrity of the Arlington Police Department's civil service rules and regulations? Option A. Expedite the investigation to reach a conclusion quickly, focusing on the initial allegations and any readily available information to address public concerns promptly. Option B. Prioritize gathering evidence that supports the initial allegations, while downplaying or omitting information that might exonerate the officer or present a more complex picture. Option C. Allow personal knowledge of the officer's character and past performance to heavily influence the interpretation of the current allegations and the final investigative outcome. Option D. Conduct a thorough and impartial investigation, meticulously gathering all evidence and interviewing all relevant parties, ensuring all findings are objectively documented and reported in strict accordance with departmental policy. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough and impartial investigation, meticulously gathering all evidence and interviewing all relevant parties, ensuring all findings are objectively documented and reported in strict accordance with departmental policy. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between departmental policy, the need for thorough investigation, and the potential for public perception to influence outcomes. Officers must navigate these competing interests while upholding the integrity of the civil service system and ensuring fair treatment for all involved. The specific context of Arlington, Texas, requires adherence to its local civil service rules and regulations. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a meticulous and impartial investigation that strictly adheres to the Arlington Police Department's civil service rules and regulations. This approach prioritizes gathering all relevant facts, interviewing all parties involved without bias, and documenting findings objectively. The justification for this approach lies in the fundamental principles of due process and fairness enshrined in civil service systems. By following established procedures and relying solely on evidence, officers ensure that decisions are based on merit and factual findings, thereby protecting the integrity of the civil service process and preventing arbitrary or discriminatory actions. This aligns with the overarching goal of civil service to ensure competent and ethical public service. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves prematurely concluding the investigation based on initial impressions or pressure from external sources. This fails to meet the regulatory requirement for a thorough and impartial examination of all evidence. Such an approach risks violating due process by not affording the subject officer a fair opportunity to present their side or have all facts considered. It also undermines public trust in the civil service system by suggesting that outcomes can be influenced by factors other than objective findings. Another incorrect approach is to selectively gather evidence that supports a predetermined outcome, ignoring or downplaying information that contradicts it. This is a direct violation of the ethical obligation to conduct a fair and unbiased investigation. Regulatory frameworks for civil service demand that all relevant evidence be considered, and any deviation from this principle constitutes a serious breach of professional conduct and can lead to legal challenges and damage to the department's reputation. Third incorrect approach is to allow personal relationships or biases to influence the investigation or its findings. Civil service systems are designed to be merit-based and free from favoritism or prejudice. Allowing personal connections to sway an investigation compromises the integrity of the process and is a clear ethical and regulatory failure. This can lead to unjust outcomes, erode morale within the department, and expose the department to legal repercussions. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should employ a systematic decision-making process that begins with a clear understanding of the applicable Arlington Police Department civil service rules and regulations. They should prioritize objectivity, impartiality, and thoroughness at every stage of the investigation. This involves developing a clear investigative plan, meticulously documenting all actions and findings, and consulting with supervisors or legal counsel when complex issues arise. The ultimate goal is to arrive at a decision that is supported by evidence, consistent with policy, and upholds the principles of fairness and due process inherent in the civil service system. Question 10. Consider a scenario where Officer Miller of the Arlington Police Department worked the following hours over a 2-week pay period. Week 1, 45 hours including 5 hours of approved overtime. Week 2, 38 hours. Officer Miller's regular hourly rate of pay is $25.00. According to Arlington Police Department Civil Service Rules and Regulations, overtime is paid at 1.5 times the regular hourly rate for all hours worked in excess of 40 hours in a single workweek. What is the total overtime pay Officer Miller is entitled to for this 2-week pay period? Option A, $125.00. Option B, $187.50. Option C, $250.00. Option D, $150.00. Correct answer is B, $187.50. Explanation: Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for law enforcement officers in Arlington, Texas, involving the accurate calculation of overtime pay. The complexity arises from the need to adhere strictly to the Arlington Police Department's civil service rules and regulations, as well as relevant Texas labor laws, which dictate how overtime is accrued and compensated. Miscalculations can lead to financial discrepancies, employee grievances, and potential legal challenges, making precise adherence to policy and accurate mathematical application paramount. The stakeholder perspective here is primarily that of the officer seeking fair compensation, and the department needing to manage its budget and comply with regulations. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves meticulously tracking all hours worked, including any approved overtime, and applying the specific overtime calculation formula mandated by the Arlington Police Department Civil Service Rules and Regulations. This approach ensures that officers are compensated accurately according to established policy. For instance, if the department's policy states that overtime is paid at 1.5 times the regular hourly rate for hours worked beyond 40 in a workweek, the calculation must reflect this. The justification lies in direct compliance with departmental policy and Texas labor law, which typically requires overtime to be paid at a premium rate for hours exceeding a standard workweek. This method upholds fairness, transparency, and legal compliance. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves simply averaging the total hours worked over a period and applying a standard overtime rate without accounting for the specific daily or weekly thresholds defined by the civil service rules. This fails to recognize that overtime is typically calculated based on exceeding a set number of hours within a defined period, e.g., a workweek, not as a general average. This method can lead to underpayment if an officer works significant overtime in some weeks but fewer hours in others, or overpayment if the average masks periods of less than 40 hours. Another incorrect approach is to use a flat overtime rate for all hours worked beyond a standard shift, regardless of whether the total weekly hours exceed the 40-hour threshold. This ignores the fundamental principle of overtime pay, which is compensation for hours worked in excess of a standard workweek. This approach would violate both departmental policy and Texas labor law, which are designed to prevent exploitation and ensure fair compensation for extended work. A third incorrect approach is to exclude certain types of paid time, such as administrative leave or training hours that are considered compensable work time by departmental policy, from the overtime calculation. This would result in an inaccurate total of hours worked, leading to an incorrect overtime calculation and potential underpayment. The civil service rules and relevant labor laws define what constitutes compensable work time, and excluding such time would be a direct violation. Professional reasoning. Professionals in law enforcement must adopt a systematic and policy-driven approach to compensation. This involves 1. Thoroughly understanding the specific overtime provisions within the Arlington Police Department Civil Service rules and regulations and any applicable Texas state labor laws. 2. Maintaining meticulous records of all hours worked, distinguishing between regular and overtime hours. 3. Applying the correct mathematical formulas and rates as stipulated by policy. 4. Seeking clarification from supervisors or the Human Resources Department when any ambiguity arises regarding policy interpretation or calculation methods. This ensures accuracy, fairness, and compliance, protecting both the officer and the department. Question 11. Upon reviewing the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure and Arlington Police Department General Orders concerning evidence management, an officer discovers a handgun during a lawful search of a suspect's residence. The officer recognizes the firearm as potentially being connected to an ongoing investigation. Which of the following actions best upholds the integrity of the evidence and complies with regulatory requirements? Option A. Dispose of the firearm at the scene, deeming it a minor discovery that does not warrant formal evidence processing. Option B. Hand the firearm to a civilian witness present at the scene, asking them to hold onto it until the investigation is complete. Option C. Immediately secure the firearm, meticulously document its discovery location and condition, and then transport it directly to the departmental evidence locker for proper logging and storage according to established procedures. Option D. Place the firearm in the officer's personal patrol car for safekeeping until the end of the shift, at which point it will be taken to the evidence locker. The correct answer is C. Immediately secure the firearm, meticulously document its discovery location and condition, and then transport it directly to the departmental evidence locker for proper logging and storage according to established procedures. Explanation. The scenario presents a professional challenge for an Arlington, Texas Police Department officer regarding the proper handling of evidence discovered during a lawful search. The core difficulty lies in balancing the immediate need to secure potentially incriminating items with the strict procedural requirements for evidence preservation and chain of custody, as mandated by Texas law and departmental policy, which are designed to ensure the integrity of evidence for prosecution and protect constitutional rights. The best professional approach involves meticulously documenting the discovery of the firearm, immediately securing it in a manner that preserves its condition and prevents tampering, and then following established departmental procedures for logging and transporting the evidence to the evidence locker. This approach is correct because it directly adheres to the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure concerning the seizure and preservation of evidence, as well as the Arlington Police Department's specific general orders on evidence handling. These regulations emphasize maintaining the integrity of the evidence from the point of discovery through its presentation in court, ensuring that it is admissible and that the chain of custody is unbroken. Proper documentation and immediate secure storage prevent any potential challenges to the evidence's admissibility due to contamination, loss, or unauthorized access. An incorrect approach would be to place the firearm in the officer's personal patrol car without immediate, formal logging and securing it in the departmental evidence facility. This is professionally unacceptable because it bypasses critical steps in the chain of custody. Texas law and departmental policy require that evidence be properly inventoried and stored in a secure, designated evidence repository to prevent unauthorized access or alteration. Leaving it unsecured in a personal vehicle, even temporarily, creates a significant risk of tampering, loss, or contamination, which could lead to the suppression of the evidence in court and undermine the prosecution's case. Furthermore, it violates the principle of accountability inherent in evidence management. Another incorrect approach would be to hand the firearm directly to a civilian witness who was present at the scene for safekeeping. This is professionally unacceptable as it breaks the chain of custody and introduces an unauthorized individual into the evidence handling process. Civilian safekeeping is not a recognized or legally permissible method for managing evidence in Texas law enforcement. It exposes the evidence to an unacceptable risk of tampering, alteration, or loss, and would almost certainly render the firearm inadmissible in court. It also places an undue burden and potential liability on the civilian. A final incorrect approach would be to dispose of the firearm at the scene, believing it to be a minor infraction. This is professionally unacceptable and illegal. Any item discovered during a lawful search that is believed to be evidence of a crime or is contraband must be seized and properly processed according to departmental policy and state law. Improper disposal constitutes a failure to collect and preserve evidence, which can have severe legal ramifications, including obstruction of justice or destruction of evidence charges, and would prevent its use in any subsequent legal proceedings. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of departmental policies and relevant state laws regarding evidence handling. Officers must prioritize adherence to established procedures for seizure, documentation, and storage. When in doubt, consulting with a supervisor or the evidence custodian is the appropriate course of action to ensure compliance and maintain the integrity of the investigation. Question 12. When evaluating a lawful search of a residence in Arlington, Texas, an officer discovers a small, unmarked baggie containing a white powdery substance in plain view on a kitchen counter. The officer has not yet completed the search of the entire residence. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the officer to take regarding this discovery? Option A. Leave the baggie on the kitchen counter, unsecured, while continuing the search of the residence. Option B. Photograph the baggie and then discard it, assuming it is not immediately relevant to the primary objective of the search. Option C. Secure the baggie, immediately notify a supervisor of the discovery, and await further instructions for its proper processing and storage. Option D. Place the baggie in the officer's personal patrol vehicle for later processing at the station. The correct answer is C. Secure the baggie, immediately notify a supervisor of the discovery, and await further instructions for its proper processing and storage. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge for an Arlington, TX Police Department officer regarding the proper handling of evidence discovered during a lawful search. The core professional challenge lies in balancing the immediate need to secure potential evidence with the strict procedural requirements mandated by Texas law and departmental policy to maintain the integrity of the chain of custody and ensure admissibility in court. Failure to adhere to these protocols can lead to the suppression of evidence, jeopardizing investigations and undermining public trust. The best approach involves immediately securing the discovered item and notifying a supervisor. This is correct because it prioritizes the preservation of evidence while simultaneously initiating the formal reporting and documentation process. Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, Article 32(01), and the Arlington Police Department's General Orders on Evidence Handling and Property Management mandate that all evidence be properly identified, logged, and secured to maintain its integrity. Promptly notifying a supervisor ensures that the discovery is handled according to established procedures, including proper packaging, labeling, and transportation to the evidence locker, thereby safeguarding the chain of custody. This proactive step minimizes the risk of contamination, loss, or tampering. An incorrect approach would be to immediately place the item in the officer's personal vehicle for later processing. This is professionally unacceptable because it breaks the chain of custody by removing the evidence from the immediate scene without proper documentation and transfer to authorized personnel or a secure evidence storage area. This action violates Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, Article 32(01), and departmental policies designed to prevent unauthorized access and potential tampering. Another incorrect approach would be to leave the item at the scene, unsecured, while continuing the search. This is professionally unacceptable as it exposes the evidence to potential loss, contamination, or tampering by unauthorized individuals, thereby compromising its evidentiary value and violating the principles of evidence preservation outlined in Texas law and departmental procedures. A further incorrect approach would be to photograph the item and then discard it, assuming it is not relevant. This is professionally unacceptable because it constitutes the destruction or improper disposal of potential evidence without proper authorization or documentation. The officer does not have the discretion to unilaterally determine the relevance of discovered items. Such decisions must be made through established investigative and prosecutorial channels, adhering to departmental policy and legal precedent. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of departmental policies and relevant state laws concerning evidence handling. Officers must prioritize the secure containment and proper documentation of all discovered items, immediately notifying a supervisor or designated evidence custodian when uncertainty exists or when the discovery is significant. This systematic approach ensures that evidence is handled in a manner that upholds its integrity and admissibility in legal proceedings. Question 13. The analysis reveals that following a significant incident in Arlington, Texas, a detective is considering releasing preliminary details of the ongoing investigation, including the name of a potential suspect and specific pieces of evidence recovered, directly to a local news reporter who is a personal acquaintance. This detective believes that providing this information will foster goodwill with the media and demonstrate the department's proactive approach. What is the most appropriate course of action for the detective? Option A. Share the information with the reporter, emphasizing that it is off the record and for background context only to gauge public reaction. Option B. Release the information to the reporter but instruct them not to publish it until after the suspect has been formally arrested to avoid prejudicing the investigation. Option C. Adhere strictly to Arlington Police Department's general orders regarding media inquiries and the release of information, which mandates that all such releases be coordinated through the Public Information Officer, and only after official charges have been filed and approved by the District Attorney's Office. Option D. Provide the reporter with the preliminary details, as building a positive relationship with the media is crucial for departmental public relations and can aid in future investigations. The correct answer is C. Adhere strictly to Arlington Police Department's general orders regarding media inquiries and the release of information, which mandates that all such releases be coordinated through the Public Information Officer, and only after official charges have been filed and approved by the District Attorney's Office. Explanation. The analysis reveals a scenario that is professionally challenging due to the inherent tension between departmental policy, public perception, and the legal rights of individuals interacting with law enforcement. The Arlington TX Police Department, like all municipal police forces in Texas, operates under the Texas Local Government Code and specific departmental general orders, which dictate procedures for evidence handling and public information dissemination. The challenge lies in balancing the need for transparency and accountability with the protection of ongoing investigations and individual privacy rights. Careful judgment is required to ensure that actions taken are both legally sound and ethically defensible, upholding public trust. The correct approach involves a meticulous adherence to established departmental policy and Texas law regarding the release of information and evidence. This means that any public statement or information release concerning an ongoing investigation must be authorized and follow established protocols, ensuring that sensitive details that could compromise the investigation or violate privacy are not prematurely disclosed. Specifically, this aligns with the principles of due process and the presumption of innocence, as well as departmental guidelines on media relations and evidence integrity. The department's commitment to transparency must be balanced with its legal obligations. An incorrect approach would be to release preliminary investigative findings or suspect information to the media without proper authorization or verification. This action could violate departmental policy on media communication, potentially prejudice a jury pool, and compromise the integrity of the investigation by tipping off involved parties. It also risks violating the privacy rights of individuals who may not ultimately be charged or convicted. Another incorrect approach would be to withhold all information indefinitely, even after an investigation is concluded and charges have been filed, citing ongoing internal review. While some information may remain confidential, Texas law generally favors public access to information related to criminal proceedings once they are formalized. This approach erodes public trust and can be perceived as a lack of transparency. A further incorrect approach would be to selectively release information to favored media outlets while denying access to others. This creates an uneven playing field, fosters suspicion of bias, and undermines the department's commitment to impartial public communication. It also fails to adhere to the principle of equal access to public information. The professional reasoning framework for such situations involves a multi-step process. First, identifying the relevant departmental policies and Texas statutes governing the specific situation, e.g., evidence handling, public information requests, media relations. Second, consulting with supervisors and legal counsel to ensure compliance with all legal and policy requirements. Third, prioritizing the integrity of the investigation and the rights of all individuals involved. Finally, communicating decisions and actions in a transparent and consistent manner, adhering to established protocols for public information dissemination. Question 14. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a new advanced surveillance system could potentially enhance crime detection and response times for the Arlington TX Police Department. However, the significant upfront investment and ongoing operational costs raise concerns about its overall value and impact on other departmental priorities. Considering the principles of responsible public resource management and the need for demonstrable improvements in public safety, which of the following approaches best guides the decision-making process for adopting this technology? Option A. Prioritize the adoption of the surveillance system based on its advanced technological features and the fact that it has been successfully implemented by other police departments in similar-sized cities, assuming it will yield comparable results. Option B. Implement the surveillance system immediately to demonstrate technological advancement and responsiveness to public safety concerns, deferring a detailed cost-benefit analysis until after the system has been in operation for at least 1 year. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive cost-benefit analysis that quantifies both direct financial costs and indirect benefits such as improved crime prevention, enhanced officer safety, and more efficient evidence collection, while also considering potential privacy implications and comparing the system against alternative solutions. Option D. Focus primarily on the potential for the surveillance system to reduce the department's overtime expenses by enabling faster incident resolution, without a detailed assessment of the system's effectiveness in actual crime reduction or its impact on officer workload. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive cost-benefit analysis that quantifies both direct financial costs and indirect benefits such as improved crime prevention, enhanced officer safety, and more efficient evidence collection, while also considering potential privacy implications and comparing the system against alternative solutions. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate needs of public safety with the long-term implications of resource allocation and departmental efficiency. The Arlington TX Police Department, like any public service agency, operates under strict budgetary constraints and must demonstrate responsible stewardship of taxpayer funds. Decisions regarding the adoption of new technology, such as advanced surveillance systems, necessitate a thorough evaluation of their benefits against their costs, not just in monetary terms, but also in terms of operational impact and potential ethical considerations. The pressure to maintain high levels of public safety while managing limited resources demands careful, evidence-based decision-making. Correct approach analysis. The approach that represents best professional practice involves a comprehensive cost-benefit analysis that integrates qualitative and quantitative factors, directly aligning with the principles of effective public administration and fiscal responsibility mandated by Texas law and departmental policies. This approach requires a detailed examination of the proposed surveillance system's potential to improve crime prevention, response times, and evidence collection, weighed against its acquisition costs, ongoing maintenance, training requirements, and potential privacy implications. The analysis should also consider alternative solutions and the opportunity cost of investing in this specific technology. This aligns with the Texas Local Government Code, which emphasizes efficient and effective use of public funds and resources, and the Arlington Police Department's own internal guidelines for technology procurement, which typically require justification based on demonstrable improvements in service delivery and public safety outcomes. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves prioritizing the perceived immediate benefits of the technology without a thorough assessment of its long-term financial implications or its actual impact on departmental efficiency. This could lead to the adoption of expensive systems that do not deliver the promised improvements, resulting in wasted public funds and a failure to address other critical needs. This violates the principle of fiscal prudence expected of public entities in Texas. Another incorrect approach is to focus solely on the technological capabilities of the system, overlooking the crucial aspects of integration with existing infrastructure, the need for specialized training for officers, and the potential for increased data management burdens. This can result in a system that is underutilized or creates operational bottlenecks, negating any potential benefits. This demonstrates a lack of strategic planning, which is essential for effective public service operations. A third incorrect approach is to adopt the technology based on anecdotal evidence or the practices of other departments, without conducting an independent evaluation tailored to the specific needs and context of the Arlington TX Police Department. This can lead to investing in solutions that are not the most effective or appropriate for the local crime patterns, community demographics, and existing departmental resources. This fails to uphold the duty of care and due diligence required in public procurement. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining the problem or need the technology aims to address. This should be followed by a comprehensive research phase to identify potential solutions, including the proposed surveillance system and any alternatives. A rigorous cost-benefit analysis, incorporating both tangible and intangible factors, is paramount. This analysis should be transparent and involve input from relevant stakeholders, including operational units, IT departments, and potentially community representatives, to ensure all perspectives are considered. The final decision should be based on objective data and a clear justification that aligns with the department's mission, strategic goals, and legal obligations for responsible resource management. Question 15. Implementation of a new departmental policy regarding traffic stops by the Arlington TX Police Department is imminent. This policy introduces revised procedures for officer conduct and documentation. What is the most effective strategy for the department to manage this implementation to ensure public trust and officer understanding? Option A. Immediately implement the new policy for all traffic stops and only address public inquiries as they arise. Option B. Release a brief internal memo to officers about the policy changes and wait for community feedback before considering public outreach. Option C. Conduct comprehensive internal training for all officers on the new policy and simultaneously issue a public statement detailing the changes, the rationale, and expected impacts on traffic stops. Option D. Prioritize extensive officer training on the new policy, deferring any public communication until officers have fully adapted. The correct answer is C. Conduct comprehensive internal training for all officers on the new policy and simultaneously issue a public statement detailing the changes, the rationale, and expected impacts on traffic stops. Explanation. The implementation of new departmental policies within the Arlington TX Police Department requires careful consideration of how these changes impact the public and the officers themselves. This scenario is professionally challenging because it involves balancing the need for efficient and effective law enforcement with the rights and perceptions of the community served. Missteps in communication or implementation can lead to distrust, reduced cooperation, and internal morale issues. The best approach involves proactive and transparent communication with all stakeholders. This means informing the public about the changes, the reasons behind them, and how they will be implemented, while also ensuring officers are thoroughly trained and understand the rationale and procedures. This aligns with principles of community policing, which emphasize building trust and collaboration between law enforcement and the public. Transparency fosters accountability and legitimacy, crucial for effective policing in Arlington, Texas. An approach that prioritizes immediate implementation without public notification fails to acknowledge the public's right to be informed and can breed suspicion. This lack of transparency undermines community trust and can lead to public backlash or misinterpretations of the department's actions. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on internal officer training without external communication, neglects the vital role of public perception and cooperation. While officer preparedness is essential, failing to inform the public about changes that directly affect their interactions with the police creates a communication vacuum that can be filled with misinformation and erode public confidence. A third flawed approach, which involves waiting for public inquiry before explaining the policy, is reactive rather than proactive. This suggests a lack of preparedness and can be perceived as an attempt to control the narrative after issues have already arisen, rather than fostering an open dialogue from the outset. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes stakeholder engagement, transparency, and clear communication. This involves identifying all relevant stakeholders, public, officers, city officials, understanding their potential concerns, developing a clear communication plan, and executing it consistently. The goal is to build and maintain trust through open and honest dialogue. Question 16. To address the challenge of securing a firearm discovered during a lawful traffic stop in Arlington, Texas, what is the most appropriate immediate action for an officer to take to ensure the integrity of the evidence and compliance with legal and departmental standards? Option A. Place the firearm in the trunk of the patrol vehicle without any initial documentation or evidence bagging to expedite the rest of the traffic stop. Option B. Leave the firearm at the scene, secured only by a written note indicating its presence, with the intention of returning to collect it after completing other duties. Option C. Engage in a detailed discussion with the driver about the firearm's discovery and potential implications before taking any steps to secure or document it. Option D. Secure the firearm, note its exact location and condition, and immediately begin the process of documenting its discovery and preparing it for submission into the evidence locker according to departmental policy. The correct answer is D. Secure the firearm, note its exact location and condition, and immediately begin the process of documenting its discovery and preparing it for submission into the evidence locker according to departmental policy. Explanation. The scenario presents a professional challenge for an Arlington, TX, police department officer regarding the proper handling of evidence, specifically a firearm discovered during a lawful traffic stop. The officer must balance the immediate need to secure potential evidence with the procedural requirements for its collection and documentation, all while adhering to Texas law and departmental policy. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring the integrity of the evidence and maintaining a clear chain of custody, which are fundamental to the justice system. The correct approach involves meticulously following established departmental procedures for evidence collection and documentation. This includes securing the firearm, noting its condition and location, and initiating the proper paperwork for its submission into evidence. This method is correct because it directly aligns with the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure and the Arlington Police Department's Standard Operating Procedures, SOP, concerning evidence handling. These regulations are designed to preserve the integrity of evidence, prevent tampering, and establish a verifiable chain of custody, which is crucial for its admissibility in court. Adhering to these protocols ensures that the evidence is handled in a manner that upholds due process and the rights of all parties involved. An incorrect approach would be to immediately place the firearm in the trunk of the patrol car without any initial documentation or securing it in an evidence bag. This fails to establish an immediate documented chain of custody and increases the risk of contamination or tampering. It violates departmental SOPs that mandate immediate logging and securing of evidence. Another incorrect approach would be to leave the firearm at the scene, secured only by a note, with the intention of returning later. This is a significant failure as it leaves the evidence vulnerable to loss, tampering, or unauthorized access, and it does not comply with the requirement for prompt collection and booking of evidence. Finally, an approach that involves discussing the discovery of the firearm with the driver in detail without properly securing and documenting it first, potentially influencing the driver's statements or actions, is also professionally unacceptable. This could compromise the investigation and the integrity of the evidence by creating a situation where the driver might attempt to manipulate the situation or the evidence itself. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established protocols and legal requirements. This involves a systematic approach. First, assess the situation for immediate safety concerns. Second, identify potential evidence. Third, consult relevant departmental policies and Texas statutes regarding evidence handling. And fourth, execute the collection and documentation procedures precisely as outlined. If there is any ambiguity, seeking guidance from a supervisor or the evidence custodian is paramount. Question 17. Examination of the data shows that a citizen in Arlington, Texas, is expressing concern that the evidence collected from their property is not being handled with sufficient care, believing it might be compromised. Officer Ramirez is tasked with responding to this citizen's apprehension. Which of the following actions best upholds the principles of justice and departmental integrity within the Texas legal framework? Option A. Officer Ramirez allows the citizen to briefly handle the evidence to demonstrate its current state, explaining that this is a special exception. Option B. Officer Ramirez clearly and calmly explains the established evidence handling procedures to the citizen, referencing the specific Texas Code of Criminal Procedure articles that mandate chain of custody and secure storage, reassuring them of the integrity of the process. Option C. Officer Ramirez dismisses the citizen's concerns, stating that departmental procedures are followed without further explanation. Option D. Officer Ramirez becomes defensive and argues with the citizen about the validity of their concerns regarding evidence handling. The correct answer is B. Officer Ramirez clearly and calmly explains the established evidence handling procedures to the citizen, referencing the specific Texas Code of Criminal Procedure articles that mandate chain of custody and secure storage, reassuring them of the integrity of the process. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because Officer Ramirez is faced with a situation where a citizen's perception of fairness conflicts with established departmental procedures and the legal framework governing evidence handling in Arlington, Texas. The citizen's emotional distress and belief that the evidence was mishandled create a potential for escalation and a complaint against the department. Officer Ramirez must balance the need for procedural integrity with the citizen's desire for transparency and reassurance, all while operating within the strict guidelines of Texas law and Arlington Police Department policy. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves Officer Ramirez clearly and calmly explaining the established evidence handling procedures to the citizen, referencing the specific Texas Code of Criminal Procedure articles that mandate chain of custody and secure storage. This approach respects the citizen's concerns by providing a transparent explanation of why the evidence is being handled in a particular manner, thereby building trust and demonstrating accountability. It directly addresses the citizen's perception of mishandling by educating them on the necessity of these protocols for ensuring the integrity of the investigation and potential court proceedings. This aligns with the Arlington Police Department's commitment to lawful and ethical conduct, as well as the broader principles of due process and the administration of justice in Texas. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach would be for Officer Ramirez to dismiss the citizen's concerns outright, stating that the procedures are simply how things are done, without providing any explanation. This fails to acknowledge the citizen's perspective, potentially alienating them and fostering distrust in the department. It also misses an opportunity to educate the public on the importance of evidence integrity, which is a cornerstone of the justice system. Another incorrect approach would be for Officer Ramirez to deviate from established protocol to appease the citizen, such as allowing them to handle or observe the evidence in a manner that compromises the chain of custody. This would violate Texas Code of Criminal Procedure articles related to evidence preservation and could jeopardize the admissibility of the evidence in court, undermining the entire investigation and potentially leading to legal repercussions for the department and the officer. A further incorrect approach would be for Officer Ramirez to become defensive or argumentative with the citizen. This unprofessional conduct would escalate the situation, damage the relationship between the community and the police, and fail to resolve the citizen's underlying concern about the evidence handling. It demonstrates a lack of empathy and a failure to uphold the department's standards of professional conduct. Professional reasoning. Professionals in law enforcement should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes clear communication, adherence to legal and departmental policy, and de-escalation. When faced with citizen concerns about procedures, the first step is to actively listen and acknowledge their perspective. The next step is to provide a clear, concise, and accurate explanation of the relevant policies and legal requirements, referencing specific statutes where applicable. This educational approach fosters transparency and builds trust. If a deviation from protocol is suggested or perceived, the professional must immediately assess whether such a deviation would compromise the integrity of the investigation or violate legal mandates. In such cases, the professional must firmly but respectfully explain why the deviation cannot occur, reiterating the importance of procedural adherence. Maintaining a calm and professional demeanor throughout the interaction is paramount, even when faced with frustration or misunderstanding. Question 18. Research into the procedures for accessing sensitive personal information for investigative purposes within the Arlington, TX, Police Department reveals a need for officers to understand their obligations. An officer is investigating a serious crime and believes a specific individual's phone records, held by a private telecommunications company, contain crucial evidence. The officer has a strong suspicion, but no immediate probable cause for a warrant. What is the most appropriate and legally compliant course of action for the officer to pursue in Arlington, Texas? Option A. Formally request the phone records through the appropriate departmental channels, outlining the investigative need and seeking legal counsel or supervisory approval for the necessary legal process, such as a subpoena or court order. Option B. Utilize personal contacts within the telecommunications company to informally obtain the phone records, explaining the urgency of the investigation. Option C. Advise the victim that the investigation cannot proceed without immediate probable cause for a warrant and postpone further action indefinitely. Option D. Directly access the individual's phone records through any available departmental database that might have access to such information, assuming it is for a legitimate investigative purpose. The correct answer is A. Formally request the phone records through the appropriate departmental channels, outlining the investigative need and seeking legal counsel or supervisory approval for the necessary legal process, such as a subpoena or court order. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in law enforcement, balancing the need for information with the rights of individuals and the integrity of investigations. The professional challenge lies in navigating the ethical and legal boundaries of information gathering, particularly when dealing with sensitive personal data that could be accessed through official channels. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any access to information is lawful, necessary, and proportionate, avoiding potential misuse or breaches of privacy. The best professional approach involves adhering strictly to established departmental policies and state laws governing access to sensitive information. This means initiating a formal request through the proper channels, which typically involves demonstrating a legitimate law enforcement purpose and obtaining any necessary authorization or warrant. This approach is correct because it upholds the principles of due process, privacy rights, and accountability mandated by Texas law and Arlington Police Department civil service regulations. It ensures that access to information is documented, justifiable, and subject to oversight, thereby protecting both the public and the department from legal and ethical repercussions. An incorrect approach would be to bypass official procedures and directly access the information using departmental databases without proper authorization. This is professionally unacceptable because it violates departmental policy and potentially state statutes concerning unauthorized access to protected information. Such an action undermines the integrity of the investigation by potentially compromising evidence if obtained unlawfully and exposes the officer and the department to disciplinary action, civil liability, and criminal charges. Another incorrect approach involves relying on informal channels or personal contacts within other agencies to obtain the information. This is professionally unacceptable, as it circumvents established interagency cooperation protocols and legal safeguards. It creates a lack of accountability and documentation, making it difficult to verify the legitimacy of the information obtained and potentially leading to the use of unreliable or illegally acquired data. A final incorrect approach would be to delay the investigation indefinitely due to a perceived difficulty in obtaining the information through proper channels. While caution is necessary, an indefinite delay without exploring all legitimate avenues is professionally deficient. It can hinder the effective administration of justice and fail to protect the public interest. The professional reasoning framework for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of departmental policies and relevant Texas statutes. When faced with a need for information, an officer should first identify the specific information required and the legal basis for obtaining it. If direct access is not permissible, the officer should consult with supervisors and legal counsel to determine the appropriate lawful procedure, such as seeking a warrant or utilizing formal information sharing agreements. Documentation of all steps taken and decisions made is crucial for accountability and transparency. Question 19. During a lawful traffic stop in Arlington, Texas, an officer observes a small, unmarked vial containing a white powdery substance on the passenger seat. Which approach would be most appropriate for the officer to take in this situation? Option A. Discard the vial immediately, as it is small and its contents are not immediately identifiable as contraband. Option B. Secure the vial, document its location and appearance, and follow departmental procedures for collecting and logging it as potential evidence. Option C. Ask the driver if the vial belongs to them and if they consent to the officer taking it. Option D. Place the vial in the patrol car's console for later examination after the traffic stop is concluded. The correct answer is B. Secure the vial, document its location and appearance, and follow departmental procedures for collecting and logging it as potential evidence. Explanation: the scenario presents a challenge for an Arlington TX police department officer regarding the proper handling of evidence discovered during a lawful traffic stop. The core professional challenge lies in balancing the immediate need to secure potential evidence with the procedural requirements for its collection and preservation, ensuring it remains admissible in court and upholds the integrity of the investigation. Missteps can lead to the suppression of crucial evidence, jeopardizing prosecution and undermining public trust. The best approach involves meticulously adhering to the established protocols for evidence handling as mandated by Texas law and departmental policy. This means recognizing the item as potential evidence, securing the immediate area to prevent contamination or loss, and then following the specific procedures for documenting, collecting, and logging the evidence. This systematic process ensures chain of custody is maintained, the evidence is properly preserved, and its admissibility in any subsequent legal proceedings is maximized. This aligns with the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure concerning the seizure and preservation of evidence. An approach that involves immediately discarding the item, even if it appears insignificant at the time, is professionally unacceptable. This failure to preserve potential evidence directly violates departmental policy and Texas law, which requires officers to collect and preserve evidence that may be relevant to a crime. Such an action could be construed as obstruction or tampering with evidence, leading to severe disciplinary action and undermining the investigation. Another professionally unacceptable approach would be to simply place the item in the patrol car without proper documentation or containment. This bypasses critical steps in the evidence logging and chain of custody process. Without proper documentation, it becomes impossible to prove where the item came from, when it was collected, and by whom, rendering it inadmissible in court. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of fundamental evidence management principles crucial for law enforcement in Texas. Finally, an approach that involves discussing the item with the driver and asking for their permission to take it without following proper procedure is also flawed. While community engagement is important, it does not supersede legal and departmental requirements for evidence collection. The discovery of potential evidence during a lawful stop triggers specific procedural obligations that cannot be waived by informal consent outside of established protocols. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to legal statutes and departmental policies. This involves a clear understanding of when an item constitutes potential evidence, the immediate steps required to secure it, and the subsequent procedural requirements for its collection, documentation, and preservation. When in doubt, consulting with a supervisor or evidence custodian is always the prudent course of action to ensure compliance and maintain the integrity of the investigative process. Question 20. The evaluation methodology shows that the Arlington TX Police Department is assessing a candidate's ability to manage departmental resources. If a team of 5 officers each worked an average of 5 hours of overtime during a specific pay period, and the established overtime pay rate is $35.50 per hour, what is the total overtime cost for this team during that period? Option A, $798.75. Option B, $710.00. Option C, $798.00. Option D, $887.50. Correct answer is A, $798.75. Explanation: the evaluation methodology shows that the Arlington TX Police Department Civil Service exam is designed to assess a candidate's ability to apply mathematical principles to real-world scenarios relevant to law enforcement. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a precise calculation of overtime costs, which directly impacts departmental budgeting and resource allocation. Inaccurate calculations could lead to misallocation of funds, potentially affecting operational readiness or officer compensation. Careful judgment is required to ensure the accuracy and efficiency of the overtime calculation process. The best professional practice involves accurately calculating the total overtime hours worked by the officers, and then multiplying this by the established overtime pay rate. This approach ensures that the department is accurately accounting for its financial obligations and that officers are compensated correctly according to departmental policy. Specifically, the calculation would involve summing the overtime hours for each officer and then multiplying by the overtime rate of $35.50 per hour. This method aligns with standard accounting practices and ensures compliance with any relevant Texas labor laws or departmental financial regulations regarding overtime pay. An approach that calculates overtime based on a flat daily rate without considering the actual hours worked is professionally unacceptable. This fails to adhere to the principle of accurate compensation for time worked and could lead to underpayment or overpayment of officers, violating departmental policy and potentially state labor laws. Another professionally unacceptable approach is to estimate overtime costs by simply multiplying the number of officers by a hypothetical average overtime, as this lacks the precision required for accurate financial reporting and budgeting. Such an estimation method ignores the actual data and introduces significant potential for error, which is contrary to sound financial management principles. Professionals should employ a systematic and data-driven approach to financial calculations. This involves understanding the specific parameters of the calculation, e.g., overtime rate, hours worked, gathering accurate data, applying the correct mathematical formulas, and verifying the results. In situations involving departmental budgets and compensation, adherence to established policies and regulations is paramount. When in doubt, consulting departmental financial guidelines or supervisors is a critical step in ensuring professional and compliant decision-making.